Hey, welcome to the channel, Gate to Babylon, the gate to everything. Hi, greetings. This is Ali, and today let's get to it directly. Things are going really fast. You have read the title, that's why you clicked, and you have saw the thumbnail. So let's get to it. It's just getting really fast. It might get really fast. Some things change really quickly. I'm trying to do this video as fast as possible, but there's a high possibility for something happening while I'm editing it, but I don't think so that much is gonna happen. However, I have now some time to record and make this video, so let's get to it. We want to comment on the Russian-Ukrainian problem that's going on right now. Of course, it didn't start right now, but I mean the tension there is right now in the last month or so, most specifically in the last 3 weeks, and what's going on since we're not gonna go that much back. You know the story, all that stuff. You definitely have seen the other videos somewhere else from other channels, so we're gonna get right to it. We wanna emphasize that in 2014, when they took Crimea, Russia when invaded Crimea, is a very important point here. I want to make this as short as possible, so let's get to the point. This is generally just points we need to point out and talk about a little bit, and I'll see the rest of you in the comments. So first point, regarding just a little bit of footnote back, just a step back in terms of Crimea. When there was elections before the Russian took Crimea, and the pro-Russian candidate lost the election, it's both sides. There is corruption. Generally, it's not that much corruption, but there is some quite noticeable corruption in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian government. We need also, in brackets, we need to emphasize the difference between the government and the people, but right now the government is more towards with the general public, with its current president and the crisis that's going on. So yeah, let's put that a footnote just aside. Now let's come back. There is corruption, and it was even stronger before. So both sides are problem here. Both candidates, definitely both candidates have cheated. There is an American influence here. There's no denial of that, but both are cheating, basically what I'm gonna say. And in that particular incident, a lot of people say that they put a lot of blame on the Russian candidate. There is stuff that he's doing, but the pro-Western candidate also did stuff. We need also to point out very importantly that there is Russian people living there, and there is in the eastern side. Of course, that doesn't justify anything of that type or whatever, but it's a very important point. It's still important because not because there is Russian-speaking people and Russian people there, but more because there actually, or at least before Crimea, there was a lot of there was division in Ukraine. There's people who are on the Russian side, and there's people who with a NATO type of thing. So there is division, and even to today, there is some level of division, and there is more support to Russia. There's especially in the east, there are more people supporting Russia than the Western media wants to tell you. I'm pretty sure from that. We don't explain that in its own would take this entire video, or at least half of it, but there's a lot of things I want to say just very quickly, but take that as grain of salt and do your research. But trust me, it's that's the fact that Ukraine is divided in that regard. For example, for more information, look at the channel Mo Freedom Foundation. I agree with this guy about most of things, but I do disagree in some stuff. I agree in 90% or so of the things that he talks about, and how he talks about and how he approached it in his opinion. But there's I disagree a little bit in terms of the Ukraine. Not disagree, but I want to add a little bit more in terms of Ukraine crisis problem. Now, look at the last couple up videos in terms of Ukraine for more information. Also, you can look any reasonable political commentator. Their opinion is gonna be valid to some extent. We don't know, of course, but you definitely have looked these guys by now. Me personally, I think I'm talking from the 20 seconds. An invasion is not likely. Like, come on. It's gonna be a bit stupid. However, it is a bit understandable, but the thing is, it can be an invasion. Like, I'm not saying when I'm saying invasion is stupid, it's not like there's not gonna be an invasion. This could be, but the thing is, that's not longer an invasion, you know what I mean? There's like multiple different ways to do an invasion. This could be just a barrage, no actual invasion, or a barrage with a little invasion, or a barrage with a support on the ground, a little bit of tiny invasion supporting the separatists, or annexing the separatist area, the two areas. Other than Crimea. Crimea is not so, it's basically about of Russia right now, but since 2014. But you know, those type of things. But that's not a full invasion. I don't think so. Even the separatist area gonna see, you know, a lot of tanks or even a lot of armor and a lot of units and soldiers moving. I don't think so. He's gonna use 150,000-ish soldiers in the border. That's a little bit for a show, I think. You don't know what's gonna happen. He has the capacity and the capability to very much roll over Ukraine, all of it, if he wants to. But you know, logically, like, of course, I don't have all the information. Nobody does. Only Putin and a few guys. But right now, like, this is not a history subject. This is not history. This is right now, and it's difficult. Like, if it's a history thing, we almost have the capability to have all the information we possibly could have, but this is not the case, and this is a lot of different than stuff I talked about before, or ever I will talk about in the future. Hopefully this type of shit doesn't happen again, but invasion is very unlikely, at least to say that. Of course, not impossible though, and that's the scary part of it. Like, you don't know. So now let's get to the heart of the video and let me make the statements. So if Russia invades, in my opinion, it's gonna be easy, because this is why I think if an invasion with a 50-50 invasion or a full-out invasion will happen, the primary thing that's gonna work, that's gonna be in work, is air force, rocket missiles, and perhaps special forces and special units, drones, and other form of warfare, assassination, mafia, perhaps chemical weapons and special weapons. It's what I mean by special weapons. Of course, the Russian gonna use this as a testing ground, so they're gonna test a new kit and new technologies and ideas, and of course, perhaps for certain targets they're gonna use sub-nuclear thermal explosion devices, which is like, don't worry about the nuclear part of it. It's a sub-nuclear. It's a thermal explosion, basically. It's just thermal explosions. It's just water compressed explodes. It's not exactly like that. There's a little bit of a nuclear element of it, but there's no radiation. It's like just heat radiation, normal radiation, no nuclear, fallout radiation type of thing. But it's very powerful. A lot of fire cannot be brought down easily. It's insanely powerful, and if a big amount of it used once in one rocket or one shell, it will be just as devastating in terms of an explosion as a nuclear explosion would be. Over more fire. It's more like a super grenade. It's more like that, but instead of normal shrapnels from tiny steel and stuff like that, it's gonna be fire. It's primarily gonna be definitely the air force and the missiles. The rocket technology, which is very advanced in terms of Russia. This is their primary strength. The Air Force of Ukraine is basically useless against the Russian Air Force and their rocket systems, and they don't have just advanced, they have a ton of them, and they have a ton of stockpiles they need to use it, because these things, you made them, you have ton of stockpiles, you need maintenance with them, so you better use them and get rid of the maintenance, you know what I mean? So these two is gonna be the primary device. Is like, why would you fight an opponent, like in terms of being efficient, in terms of just making sure you win and make sure you don't take damage? Why would you fight an opponent if you can take them out from a distance? You know what I mean? So it's gonna be primary missiles and air force, which is actually not just this is the best thing that Russia can do. This is the strength of Russia. This is generally what World War III is. What I mean is what modern warfare is. Rockets, generally rockets, even the Air Force, what it's using, like rockets, yes, but there's bombs and stuff like that, but primarily it's all about rockets. It's all about the Air Force and things flying in air, whether that's a jet or a Raptor or a rocket or a helicopter. But a helicopter is more like a specialized thing, not very effective. It just can take helicopters, no problem, but it has its own role. It's more like a support. It can do other things, not so it can strike, and okay, you know what I mean? It's gonna take too long if we go through all the details, but primarily jets, perhaps Raptors. Does Russia have Raptors anyway? I don't know. But jets generally, and the Air Force, and as we said, the Air Force and missiles. That's the main thing. What I think is, it's gonna be easy for Russia. So if a fight breaks out, like a serious fight, a serious war, declaration of war, serious stuff, whether that half or all or whatever, even if just few sections, this is what I think is gonna happen. But depending on the level of the target, like, I mean, not the specific target, but what the level of the strategic target overall, like half of the country or all the country or section, the volume of these things would differ accordingly. But generally, I think this is how it's gonna go. So we talked about the Air Force and the rockets, so hell barrage all over everything, and just decimate any possible resistance and all that type of thing. Then after that, you have all type of warfare and stuff like that. Then you have troops moving in cover of the rockets and the Air Force bombardment, and increase the bombardment. But according to certain units, do things closer to the border of the point of advance of the Russian army, and not all the Russian army will advance. Just a little bit of tanks and infantry and stuff like that in the front, and there will be a cycle. So these are not really invading; they'll just take a little bit of a strategic depth a little bit, and then they will retreat a little bit back and put artillery and short range missiles, those hill reach type of missile. These famous the famous thing that Russia is famous for in World War II, these like the shower rockets. I'll put an image and the name of it with the screen. I don't remember the name of it, but that thing in conjunction with cannons, all type of cannons, as well as mobile artillery units, those whom look like a tank, but it's just a big cannon with a machine, mobile artillery type of thing. So these would be moving forward and giving and bombarding the front line, or according to their range. And when that gets destroyed, the bit streak, it's not a full bit streak means speed and stuff like that, but it's not a full bit streak, so then a little bit would move a little bit in and increase the radius, or increase the the strategic depth of the artillery and the short range rockets range and accuracy by closing in and increasing. Of course, when that happens, you have to increase the Air Force support and missiles, long range missiles, cover up to that particular position, and then so on and so forth. You move in, but that's not gonna take that much longer. And after a certain length, there's gonna be some serious air force attacks at that particular line, and then after it gets decimated, the army will attack with a cover from the air, and then before engaging there will be cluster bombs attacks, and then there will be bomber support, and there will be drones supporting the initial attack in this particular moment, and then the tanks and stuff will come in also with the support of drones. Of course, the militias, the separatists and the militias will be engaging first, as well as the numbers of these guys will be increased with mercenaries, as well as Russian soldiers undercover, special forces, all that type of thing. There will be assassination, all the other type of form of warfare, but let's focus on the army itself, the core, the soldiers and stuff for a minute. We're not going to talk about that stuff. You can imagine it's going to be devastating. This is ridiculous, seriously. But this is the logical way to go to it, in my opinion. If an invasion will happen, and so on and so forth, they push their way. The reason for that, Russia has the advantage in machines, as well as in the air force, as well as in the rocket technology. So, artillery, all type of artillery with rockets or shells, the big guns. Russia has a lot of those, and these are long range or somewhat long range. They're not definitely close range weaponry. Can take an opponent from afar, and you have the air force. So that's why I think these are gonna be emphasized. The artillery and the short range rockets gonna be used as cover up, an additional cover up for the tanks. And these essential tank and armored vehicle and elite units, not special forces, but elite unit in the army, like I would say maximum 50,000, with the other guys there already there, special forces and the separatists are, but I think maximum 50,000 would be just having just to secure strategic depth. Then the real deal army will come in, so do skirmishes and stuff like that, but then also use the navy to take the rest of the Black Sea coast, like Odessa, then slowly move the troops inside behind the artillery, hit let loose. The reference here. So then just cut and surround big cities and cut necessary things from the population in a siege as long as necessary forever, with skirmishes and bombardment, gas attack and drone assassination strikes. Stay outside cities, divide and conquer. Any resistance wipe it out from a distance with massive fire power as much as possible, more than even necessary. Use sound bombs to increase explosion sound, as well as perceive numbers. Poison water supply with chemical that kills in a long time, that you have a vax for it. Also use the Ukrainian Russian population to do crazy shit deep across the country. Also heavily support and spread the separatists. Then move tanks and other heavy or armored vehicles, also with artillery support and cover, and more soldiers. So primarily the air force and the missiles are the key here. I don't think so. They need to fight on the ground more than special forces and assassination intelligence agencies and mafia stuff. And that's why all the support weaponry kit support that United States and it is NATO allies send it to Ukraine is almost useless. I wouldn't say 100% useless. It's very, very useful for a post-invasion, which is also ridiculous. But for the invasion itself, Russia is not gonna send the tanks, alright? Or at least not much. These javelins are not gonna take a single tank. They're not gonna be used. Of course, if a tank gets destroyed and then somebody will comment after like a month or two, here look, a tank got destroyed, blah blah blah. Like this is a hyperbole, okay? Perhaps 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, but not many. especially in the invasion, in the couple first days, because they not gonna fight. If they know there's enemies there, they just gonna bombard the hell out of you. That's all. Whether that artillery, short range machine gun off, short range missiles, rockets, or whether that's gonna be ballistic missiles, that shit. So yeah, you're gonna any defense gonna be blown apart. Like, we're talking about hundreds upon hundreds, if not millions upon millions of tons of TNT, equivalent of power, gonna be unleashed all over Ukraine, destroying everything and anything. Not I'm not meaning destroy every single home and stuff like that, but like power plant, industries, factories. Of course, they're gonna start with the military, but they're not gonna leave anything. Even if they don't invade that much, there's a possibility that they just gonna do intensive cannons, artillery, short range artillery, or perhaps move a little bit of some soldiers with a bit of streak with artillery close range, show your strength without showing how you can penetrate the with little soldiers very quickly, very efficiently cross the Ukrainian army line and do damage and come back safely or almost safely. But there's a high possibility it could be done that just rockets hits, bombs from bombers and air force strike jets and stuff all over Ukraine. There's a possibility just that happens and force the Ukraine to come to the table with whatever. I don't know what the heck they want exactly. I understand generally what they want, because Russia has a point to some degree. Of course, doesn't justify all that crap, but they do have a point. We'll come back to that later a little bit, but the thing, let's focus on how the invasion itself gonna be. So this is basically my general idea of the strategy of the invasion. Of course, you saw the Caspian report thing video. That one has a decent idea, but what I said doesn't contradict that. It's the same thing, but instead of actual invasion, or in the end, as I said, like in the late stages, there's gonna be a Russian military, hundreds of thousands of soldiers inside. But what they gonna do, after everything's decimated, of course they both the artillery and short range rockets in the head. After they clear some areas in the front, soldiers go back, put these things, anything that comes close, bombard across. If necessary, there's tanks behind that would defend the artillery position. Of course, there's an additional air force or drones will support them there. If something happens, somehow they will draw and bring new units or something. There's a side stuff. They will manage it. They're professional military. They're second biggest and most powerful military in the world for a reason. Of course, there's still nothing compared to the United States, but they're still second nevertheless. Especially regarding their budget and their entire country GDP and their entire country number of the population size, and regarding the economical state of Russia being still the second biggest military in the world is a bit of a miracle, really, without being North Korea type of starvation. With most of the starvation in North Korea is by design, by the way. I will make videos about that in the future, but let's focus here right now about Russia and Ukraine. So generally, this is what I think is gonna happen. So the Caspian report, 3 steps, invasion can be incorporated with the things that I talked about. I talked about generally the idea of operation is going to be the ideal operation. They have ton of cannons, and they have ton of missiles, and they have the supreme overlord power of Air Force in comparison to the Ukrainian Air Force. They dominate the sky. The Air Force of Russian Air Force is obsolete in that regard in comparison to Ukraine. So of course they're gonna intensively use that and capitalize on that. And the Air Force is not it's a game changer. Like, you definitely heard that before, and nobody should argue about that. Comparing the Ukrainian Air Force with the Russian Air Force is like comparing the Alliance and NATO Air Force that was used against Iraq in 1991. Like, Iraq didn't even try to use it as Air Force. There's other things in the hidden. They couldn't even run the planes because there was a secret key. Russia done stuff as it fell and given some information to the United States and locked the plane. The planes, not the plane. The plane of the plane. So they would take months to fix it and make them run again, which Iraqis don't have the time. They realized that too late. So they had zero air force, only few planes they could have run. But even if we assume that 450 Iraqi planes were run, like USA and its allies bought like 3,000 or 4,000 planes, like ridiculous. So proportionally speaking, Russia doesn't have that much numbers, but proportionally speaking, Ukraine is in the same shoes. If you assume that Iraq does use its 450 planes at the time. By the way, Iraq was the fourth and biggest and strongest military in the world. Not always being the biggest or holding the particular size number is necessarily being the strongest, but Iraq was both the fourth biggest and the fourth strongest, both at the time, especially a few years before 1991, during the 80s and stuff. Of course, they were the most trained and most professional in terms of intensive real life experience and experience in general. Like, the most experience they just were 2 years ago fighting Iran for 8 years in the most disgusting war ever in human history. It's worse than World War II, not numbers wise, but in the condition. Iraq-Iran war is basically Stalingrad on steroids plus the western front of World War II combined in one, with a little bit of modern spices added to it. That's basically the Iranian-Iraq war, and that's the reason for that, primarily because of the Zarkiz mountains. There's a very high mountain range and mountain areas between Iraq and Iran, which was a disadvantage and an advantage for both sides, but mostly for Iraq. Anyway, let's continue about Ukraine. We diverted a little bit there. It wasn't necessary per se. So I think if Russia wants to invade, in terms of how hard it is going to be to Russia, regarding the fact that they not gonna be fighting on the ground because they don't have to, and regarding the 2-point strength and how important this, especially in comparison to a country like Ukraine, in comparison to Russia, and especially talking about the air force and the missiles capability of Russia, it's gonna be easy and Ukraine stands no chance. In fact, any resistance is impossible. Ukraine isn't gonna be Afghanistan. Well, Russia could make a mistake and make it Afghanistan, which would be both horrible and hilarious, seriously, which is because it is idiotic. But if they use the air force and the rockets and artillery, like especially air force and the rocket technology, missiles, the long range missiles, Ukraine stands no chance. It's gonna be easy. Just to summarize it for you, Ukraine is fighting Zeus. That's the easiest comparison. Imagine a Spartan formation going against Zeus, like an actual Spartan formation. Alright, give them muskets. It's not gonna change anything. That's basic. The musket in this comparison is basically the javelins that the United States gave to Ukraine. It's not gonna change anything. You're going against Zeus. Things gonna rain in you hard from the sky, you know what I mean? Lightning is gonna be all over the place. This got longer than I thought, but very quickly I will just, perhaps there will be a second part, and in the second part we discuss what happened and how right or wrong I was in my estimations, and my predictions. But now I just want to bracket, very important to say that this crisis, as much as Russia is involved, USA was involved. What I mean, USA and NATO is undeniably, I'm not with Russia, but you cannot, it's like, I must say, they did provoke Russia, and Vladimir Putin, they did provoke him, like, how to say, like, especially USA, like, it's almost to speak, it's a lot similar to Kuwait, but Vladimir Putin and Russia isn't Iraq. It's a much bigger behemoth. All right. But the thing is, United States is sacrificing Ukraine for its benefit. They are benefiting of Ukraine. They are using Ukraine. Russia United States is responsible of this. To be more specific, I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the United States government, more specifically CIA. And of course, to an extent, the Pentagon is involved. But I think the Pentagon, in my opinion, is secondary, and the CIA is first. And then the rest of the American government comes after them. In this regard, in foreign interventions and foreign policy. And Biden a lot is similar to Obama, and Obama to some degree is similar to Bush, both Bushes, junior and senior, and this is basically their style. Alright, so any Ukrainian death, your state government is responsible of it. I just want to leave you with that. Well, we'll see what's gonna happen, and we're gonna talk about the rest later. We'll see. So subscribe, all that stuff, YouTube stuff. I don't need to tell you about all these YouTube stuff. Like and subscribe, and peace out. Gate to Baba and the gate to everything. Peace.